Okay, great.
Okay, so I also can share something. I think the issue Repel raised is very interesting, like how culture can also be a threat. In my personal opinion, actually, I think culture is only the tool. So it will be for good or for bad, depends on the person who is using it. How we use culture as a tool to contribute to our future, or we do something bad because interest or because of conflicts. And there's a very interesting example I could give in China, like based on my cultural background, because there is a very famous case in China a few years ago. There is a remote ethnic groups in a village, and they have a kind of performance of dance. Actually, this kind of traditional dance they only do for specific festivals. Like once a year, they will do a very beautiful dance. Everyone dressed in beautiful costumes. Like for hundreds of years, they do this kind of ceremony. And then because they're in a remote area, but once there's a kind of journalist, he came to this area and he found it very interesting because it's full of symbology, full of tradition, or full of movement and our traditional Chinese culture. And then he reports this kind of performance and in like social media, newspaper, and suddenly become very famous. Like a lot of people become attracted, and they found, oh, we want to go there to see. We want to join this kind of performance. And then because of this kind of economic interest behind, what happened for this village now is that they do the performance whenever they will become a bus, come from outside, the people come to visit. So it's very founding. Like I see some news, like they will come from outside the bus, and when they are approaching, the people who is in this village, actually they are doing normal day's work. They maybe are doing farming, they maybe are repairing the house, and then suddenly they will like stop doing everything and go back home, like dressing in this kind of traditional costume and waiting the people in the front gate of the village and starting to perform. So it means that culture in this way, because of the trigger of the economy interest, become a performance. So I think that is really a threat. It's not for sustainable future. It's becoming a show, becoming a performance. It's very dangerous if we do not taking care of what is culture for us, what is meaning for us, the culture meaning for us.
Wonderful, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. Actually, you brought up a very important point of us being very sentimental about making profits in a way. I'm guessing, yeah.
Yes.
And if I extrapolate the idea, like if I take this idea a few decades back, and we think about the entire world, the idea or the inclination of mankind towards making profit is actually what led to the climate crisis that we are facing, right?
Yes.
So that was also a culture for a point of time in a period when everyone, like everyone, every country was striving to make profits, become superpower or whatever. So somehow that was also a culture in a point of time, and that eventually led us to this particular crisis. And now we are thinking, what went wrong? What did we do wrong? So yeah,
Yes,
thank you for that. Yes, yes. Please
yeah,
go ahead.
I
Yes.
agree with you. I agree with you very much. Like I remember in the few days ago, the Lauren Smith keynote lecture, she also mentioned like we are political animals. So when we're talking about cultural issues, we should not ignore like the political layers behind. So they are in interest, they are profit behind. How should we balance the different interest conflicts between different countries? And how can we balance these political layers behind is something we have to consider when we're dealing with cultural issues.
Perfectly. Saran and Anne, you have your hands raised. Any one of you, you decide amongst yourself who wants to go first.
Sharon, go first.
Yes, because I'm not moderating the session. I am not the moderator today.
We're friends. We just go.
Yes.
Sharon, do you want to go first?
Yes, and please go ahead, and then we can take Saran, and then we can, of course, talk to.
Okay. So, um, The reason why I'm joining this conference, the Youth Forum, because the topic of culture and cultural heritage was very close to me because I was born and grew up in Georgetown cities, which is one of the World Heritage Sites under UNESCO. So I've seen from the past 2 days, we see a lot of case studies like from Turkey, from Florence. So each of these case studies, they have their like they are focusing in one culture or cultural heritage on the preservation. But in my case, my place, which is Malaysia, we are living in a multiracial community. We have a lot of religious races. So, like for example, mine is Malay. So Malay have their own culture and cultural heritage. And then there goes to Chinese, Indians, and there are another few more races. So each of these, they have their own culture and we have to live in harmony. So we have to understand each other's cultures in order for us to live in peaceful. So that's the beauty of my country for me. And then I'm just giving example from the Georgetown cities. We have Chinese, we have Malay, and then we have the colonial heritage in one place. You just walking like around 500 meters, 200 meters, you can see different cultural heritage in one place. So the issues in my countries now is on the heritage conservation because each of these buildings have their own characteristic and have their own knowledge how to conserve. But to make it general is very difficult. So that's why we are still lacking on the conservation knowledge because to preserve the Chinese buildings is different. And then our Malaysian traditional house is basically from wood. So it's different method. So
Right.
still brainstorming or still breaking our head to come up with a standard conservation guidelines or something which is still absent. So that's why my research for my PhD is focusing on the to come up with a specific framework
Right.
on the conservation. And then to conserve or to preserve this individual building or heritage building, we need to understand the culture of the things. Like I am a Malay, but I'm working in this conservation fields. And my task is to preserve the colonial building or the Indian temple. But
Right.
how? Because I'm not from that background. So I need to have the understanding, awareness, gain the knowledge from all this. So that's why I say like if we cannot be biased in my context, we have to be very careful and cannot be biased because you cannot pick okay 5% from this religion, from this races, 5% from this. Okay, you go ahead with your own building, you go ahead with your own building. So it's not gonna work like that. So
Right.
that's why I say in my point of view, in my context, Malaysian context, we are still struggling to find the best way to make sure that every single cultural heritage in our country, we get a balanced treatment. So so that's why from my opinions and from my sharing tonight.
Thank you, Anne. You actually reminded me of one of my experiences. So back in 2019, what happened is that we thought of doing some projects in a city in the province that I stay, Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad, interestingly, is the first World Heritage City of India. So we thought that why not take it up and do some risk assessments or maybe at least identify vulnerabilities. So being a part of the government agency, and I am sure that this is not going to um, backfire on me in any way in the future times because of what I'm going to say. But this is what happened actually. So we made a very good proposal of what we intend to do, how it is going to be done. We talked to stakeholders. Everyone was ready to, kind of jump into the project. And then I went to my seniors who were supposedly going to approve the idea or the project, and he was like, "Why do you want to do it for the World Heritage City of Ahmedabad? Why do you want to do it?" Uh, Now, the reason why he said that is twofold. The first thing is that most of the structures, the ones that are actually known, are famous actually, they are of Islamic origin, right? So somehow he understood that um, what what I was trying to say is that I was talking about only tangible aspects of cultural heritage, that is monuments, sites, and precincts. So that is the one thing that he did. He could not understand that there is another dimension to it, the ways of life, how people are interacting for years together. That is something that he completely missed. And then he was very skeptical about the fact that the part of the city that where you are trying to implement your project, that has a higher population of Muslims, and I am not very sure about how you should do this project. So uh, somehow there's this very interesting understanding of cultural heritage amongst people. We actually, being professionals, we talk about making a balance, ensuring that there is a balance, but somehow when we are on the ground, when we are trying to do something really great, there is someone sitting on top of us, and they say, no, you can't do that because I have a very different interpretation. So whatever you want to do, you can't do it because I have a completely different interpretation. So thank you for bringing that element to our discussion. I will pass on the mic to Saran. You come from India. You are as diverse as it can get, and you probably would add to the discussion. Over to you, Saran.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Reepal. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well today again. So, as I was listening to all the arguments made, I was reminded of an example that I was sharing with a few of my friends last night in the similar context. So, so this was something that I read in a research paper a few years ago. Uh, and sorry that I don't remember the details, but I'll share anyway. So in Indonesia, there is actually a volcano which happens to be one of the most active ones in the world. I think the name is Mount Merapi, probably. And despite the risk that the volcano poses, the community of the place, it continued to live on the slope, the slopes of the volcano, keeping up to its cultural beliefs and livelihood practices. And on the top of that, this community also used to submit some sort of offerings to the volcano, and for the losses that the eruption of that volcano brought along, people used to hold divine intervention or act of God accountable. So after one such eruptions, when the government of the place asked the community to move away from that place, several people continued staying until their community's head, the local community's head, told them to do so. So what I'm trying to say is, I think other than the intra-community differences, which tend to form the basis of what we call vulnerabilities in the context of DRR, DRM, and disasters, for a community, culture is definitely the shared set of values and expectations that influence how they interact and collaborate with one another to achieve, let's say, common aims, purposes, and goals in everyday living, right? So it is, after all, the entity which is closest to the individuals and not only forms their perspective about the world in which they live, but also influences how they perceive risks, protection, hazards that surround them, and of course, safety as well. So culture, I think, in some way also has a critical role to play in addressing the barriers within the community and also between the community in focus and the institutional structures in place for governance and let's say administration, and of course for disaster management lately in particular.
Perfect, perfect. Tatenda, you had your hands up and now you have lowered it. Why you don't want to talk to us?
No, I've decided to go the freestyle way. Well, hi
I
everyone.
was waiting for Satendra to speak up.
Yes, yes.
Very
We have
excited to
actually
listen
become
to
your
him.
fan.
Totally, big
Hi
fan.
everyone.
Hi, Tatana.
How are you? Maybe before I say whatever that I want to say, I would like us maybe to remind you that, yeah, climate change is indeed real. And as it has been witnessed here in Southern Africa for the past 3 days, where floods are actually destroying homes, various areas are being destroyed by the cyclone Anna, which is coming from Madagascar, and it's destroying, parts of Southern Africa, especially Mozambique. So yeah, climate change is real, and it's actually happening. So again, it's up to us to initiate, the possible ways to ensure that we try by all means to stop its further devastating effects. Okay, so as soon as I've joined this discussion, I can't remember who was talking about heritage and profit. I think it's yes, thank you. um, whenever I hear something like that, the whole topic, it actually ignites me, and it's of particular interest to me. Heritage and profit. Most of the societies, in as far as heritage management is concerned, they look at it from a profit perspective. In 2017, I embarked on a certain project where I was trying to teach the communities about their heritage and various ways in which they can benefit from their heritage. Now, from the responses that I've been getting, it seems like, one of the main reasons why most of the heritage sites are being destroyed, not by external people, but by the communities themselves, are because they are saying, what is there in it for us? So what are they saying? They are saying, do we eat heritage? That's one of the interesting questions that they have to ask. Okay, you are saying we should safeguard this whole heritage thing, but do we eat heritage? Do we eat culture? Culture being part of those physical manifestations. So I think there is a whole interesting aspect, and again a gap which has to be closed between the community understanding of their heritage versus profit. In this world that we are living, it seems like everything is now being channeled towards profit making. So whatever that is not making sense, making profit, it's something which is of no use to the modern day people. So how do we reconcile those two things, communities and the profit and profit? How can we make heritage become a profitable aspect to the community, but at the same time making sure that such heritage is preserved and its integrity is kept? So we are talking of profit, but in a sustainable manner. So after that year, I joined where I was doing some tour guides, some tour around one of the World Heritage sites. And the idea that came into my head was like, okay, if the communities were saying we don't eat heritage, and I was, acting like a fool in front of them, why can't we ensure that we try by all means to promote green travel, green tourism, so that at the end of the day, the communities will have that zeal to preserve their heritage because they know that something is coming out of their heritage, something that will allow them to feed their stomachs at the end of the day.
Right.
So I think it's a very interesting issue, talking of heritage and profit. And the interesting thing again that it should be Anne who was talking about, and you Rapu again, Dr. Rapu, you were talking about, the rift or the line, the parallel line between the policymakers and the communities,
Yeah.
where some community members will be saying, we cannot listen to what you are saying unless it is coming from one of our own.
Yes.
So yes, Southern Africa, we have a history of colonialism, where we've been reading and we've been told that colonization actually distanced the local people from their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite sad that up to now, 30, 40 years since we have got independence, nothing much has been done to address that issue which relates to heritage, where communities are still far away from their heritage. Communities are still alienated from their heritage. So again, it goes back to that aspect of heritage and profit. Just because it takes time for one to teach those communities because they are already lost. Yes. So it takes time. Now, that gap between the government, not only the government, but we as professionals, mind you, when the community sees us, they look at us from this, how can I say it, the superiority eye, where they are looking at you, with a superiority eye that you are superior than them. So they will, it becomes difficult for them to listen to whatever that you will be saying, unless it is coming from one of their own. Now, what's the solution to that? I think the solution to that is to ensure that at least we create synergies, connections, we work as much as we can with the communities. As much as we can, the government, the policymakers, they don't need to make, hasty decisions. They just need to make, collaborative decisions where they are, ensuring that everyone is included. So yeah, it's quite an interesting discussion. Thank you for starting it. Thank you very much.
You will be brought into the discussion once again. You have nowhere to go. You are stuck with us. Let us give Arsum, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You want to add to our discussion?
Hi guys. Yes, it's Arsum. Am I audible?
Yes, perfectly.
All right. So as you first, I would like to say, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Mr. Tadenda. I mean, I would like to add to his what he said with a quote by Oscar Wilde, if I may. That he was right. We know the price of everything, but we know the price of everything, but the value of nothing, and that actually shows. Furthermore, moving on. All right. So colonization and heritage. I mean, Mr. Repal, there are people from India, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, even. Colonization has happened. Now, the debate that actually ensues is that has this become heritage on its own? Like, I mean, it's kind of weird to think of it. Now that has become a heritage, and now that is something that we should learn from rather than disregard completely. Right. So, I mean, this kind of sounds a little controversial, but I would just say, like, it's not a colonial apologetics I'm talking about, but in a more broader sense, it's about learning from the past. Moving on. Mr. Epol, I was actually really interested, and I actually would like to agree with your statement that there actually is a cultural gray area. Like, I'm a heritage professional, I do conservation, heritage conservation, right? Basically, I'm more of a civil engineer, and I completely agree that there is a cultural gray area that's difficult to wade, and that culture in developing countries, at least, is a risk amplifier, right? Now, allow me to explain. I mean, I had noticed, like, bear with me. There are, it is well known and it is well debated, it is well argued that there are destructive elements of culture, right? I mean, I'm a heritage professional, so I should not be saying this, but there actually are, right? And being part of culture, being, part of culture does not mean you have to condone some outdated cultural practices that we do. Like, cultural practices is in sync with conservative views of society. I mean, that's not what it boils down to. There is more to that. But what generally people assume is that if you are a part of culture, support the conservative views in society, and which are usually not in tune with the liberal values of the world. The world is striving towards, or the world as a global village is striving towards. Moving on, some cultural practices. I mean, they cause more harm, and over time, I mean, they will just might go away as the world gets more into a global village sort of it. They might go away on their own, but the real thing that separates us, that real identity, the actual identity that the culture gives a person in a global perspective would stay. Moving on, I'll just take a little more of your time. I'm really sorry. After the cultural liberal dilemma, I would also say that there are many, cultural premises and obstacles that come as a personally as a conservator. Like, I would tell about my experience at there was a UNESCO training workshop in Makli in 2021, which I was, able to attend. And I've I understood that living monuments, right, are among the most dangerous or difficult to conserve, right? Because they are living monuments. They are, in a way, they are tangible heritage, but they have this intangible veil over them, right? That the people associate with the tangibility, and it's just a completely different dimension on its own.
Right.
Have we lost his volume, his sound?
Yes, I think we are some you are there. No.
Dr. Paul, I have a question to about the. Hello,
Yeah.
Doctor,
Yes,
am I audible?
yes, you
Yes,
are
hear you.
audible. You can ask a question to any one of us. We all are in the
No,
discussion.
no. The previous speaker who said
Okay.
uh, there is a
And
cultural
that was some great side. Yep.
Arsam, we lost you for a couple of minutes.
Oh,
I think
oh my God! I don't want to go over that all again. All right. So where was I the last time, if you do remember? Because I don't.
Rajdeep, we will come back to you in a minute. So
Okay,
sorry
Uh,
for this.
okay.
Yeah.
please, Mr. Razi. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank
no,
you
no.
so much.
You can continue. Arsam, you were at the point where you said that yes, there is an intangible veil over the tangible living heritage, living monuments. Yes, that was the point where we lost you.
All right, and thank you for listening. So, I mean, that actually does, I mean, after all, there is someone who actually does understand this. All right, moving on. So this wheel makes them a little more of a challenge to conserve professionally, and heritage in developing countries. I mean, you might be also aware of the fact that in developing countries with struggling economies, heritage is really seen, and I hope I don't get, because it's a friendly environment, and I think what I'll say would not actually hurt any sentiments, but it's really an elitist approach, you know and it's really an elitist activity, heritage. I mean, in developing countries with economies, people, the general population usually don't care about heritage as much. They care about, getting through the day, or having a food on the table. So that is something that we neglect,
Mhm.
and it's not on the priority list. Moving on, anybody has any question? I heard there were some questions while I was away. I hope I would make sense.
Yes, you do perfectly, and we are not the judge to make sense of anything. We are just discussing anything and everything today. Thank you, Aslam, for your
I'm glad. I'm glad. All right, it was really nice.
yes. Don't leave our room. We are having this discussion. We will come back to you definitely because someone will point out something that we need to discuss again.
All right, I'm scared.
Okay. And you had your hands up.
Oh yes. Actually, I was caught by about the culture heritage and making a profit from there.
Mhm.
Because I actually, because I'm from interior architecture background, so I did one project. I think 4 years or 5 years back in Georgetown. Thank goodness, because Georgetown was put under the World Heritage Site. So the development is actually for high-rise, a luxury high-rise condominium project on a land where there are a heritage building, a very small heritage building, the colonial one. So because each of the heritage buildings was have their own ownership. So I believe the owner of that land and the building sell their land for the developers. So they are making a luxury high-rise condominium. And then but due to the site is within the World Heritage Buffer Zone, so all the heritage building cannot be touched at all. So they have to preserve, they have to remain the tiny house on the land. So basically, the architect was breaking their head because they have to change the whole master plan. And in the end, they are doing a U-shaped house surrounding the small heritage building. And then they were thinking like how to, because their residential building is very modern design, but how to connect with the heritage. So we are one of the because I'm under the design team, so we are trying to find something to connect within these two, and then they are making a team or concept of the development, which is connection of heritage to the modern life, something like that. So and then the building, the heritage building was very in a bad shape because it's left untreatment. So all
Right.
the architects have to do a treatment. They cannot touch, they cannot do major changes. They have to preserve back and then have to blend with the modern high-rise condominium. And then when at first we cannot imagine at all how it will turn out. Then it did. And then surprisingly, that heritage building become one of the most famous marketing for that project because the people who bought that house is mostly from Singaporean and other countries because they love, because the view is just beside the sea. So it's very, very nice view, very expensive view, we say. So then that heritage building become the marketing to that project. And then that's the only project in that Penang, in that cities, IC states, using that kind of the combination of connecting between the modern and the heritage, because most of the project that doing within the heritage area, they will try to design their building to match the heritage. But this one is different. So I from that I see how actually the heritage
Mhm.
can help making a profit even for our modern development. It's just that we must have the knowledge or awareness. We cannot be too greedy. We have to remain the heritage as it is, and we still can do our original plan, which is the modern things. It's just that we have to find a way to connect it, and it will make more added value for both projects.
Kudos to you that you could do it. I mean, if every one of us thought that way, that we can actually look into our cultural heritage and try to connect it with our modern development agenda, things would have been very different from what it is now. Thank you for that, Anne. Yapping, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Are you
Yeah,
still
you
with
did a good job. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for giving me the floor. First of all, I would like to tell you that your surname for me is very interesting because it's like Chinese character, you know, in Japanese language.
Yes.
Kanji, yeah. Okay, maybe you
Yes.
have some, you know, some cultural roots from Japan. Okay.
Not at
Not at all. Okay. Well, first of all, something about me. So I used to be a professional in the cultural heritage field, but then I decided to do a PhD in urban development. So I think it's really very important to link cultural preservation and social economic development. Otherwise, there's no end. So I really echo and I really share what Dadanda just mentioned. I think he really brought up a lot of very insightful points. Like when we talk about climate and or cultural heritage, we should really reason within framework of trade-offs. There are so many trade-offs, and you cannot really achieve one thing, or prioritize one against the other. And but unfortunately, now we have to, you know, create a really a balance among different fields of interest. You know, that's why it's so hard. Like for culture, you know, people understand culture differently, and maybe for me it's a pride, and for others maybe it's humiliation, or it's like you know, a negative history, like what is going on in the Western world. They are just you know, destroying the statues, or just you know, humiliating the statues. It's like a revenge. But I mean, of course there are so many voices. So how to really create a, you know, a society where you have multicultural coexistence. I think this responsibility, this burden will finally be shouldered by us, the young generations, because we are supposed to be more, you know, open-minded and more tolerant and more understanding, you know. So we should really keep growing this virtual space. I mean, it should not stop here. It should you know, like a tree, and ever grows. So also I think for climate, you know, now I like in India, you are also a very big country. You have so many, you know, different ethnicities and different languages. So how can you create a coherent and also a collective, you know, background on which every voice would be heard, respected, and also each group would contribute to this climate, you know, action. I think it will be such a big challenge. And also since now for us, I mean, we are from developing countries now, so the priority now is still how to make sure that everyone has food, everyone has clothing, and we are not, you know, we are still struggling to reach this. And our systems are getting more and more complicated, but not complex. Complicated, that means it's very giant, but very fragile. Look at what we have during the pandemic. this is really tells us what is wrong with our system. It's not only about health system, no. So I really think that it's hard because I'm not pessimistic, but I think what I understand from the politics, and I think still the priority would be growth. You know, more and more growth. Even if like, I mean, you're already so good, you know, like Western world. They are much, you know, more affluent, but still the growth, you know, is the key word. If you look at the, you know, the regional policies, you know, of each country, Western country, or like the European Union, the key word is always about growth.
Right.
Of course, now they also talk about growing, they talk about the environment, but growth is a priority. So I think maybe we should wait for one day when the, how to say, when everyone, especially the politicians, that become growth, how do you call it, a growth neutral or growth agnostic. That means you are either pro or against it. Otherwise, I think it will always be a challenge. Yeah.
And I truly believe that a very positive step forward would be to, you know, kind of understand and acknowledge the fact that there are differences of understanding and perceptions, and it will continue to be there, right? So we have to, you correctly pointed it out, that we, the youth, the young professionals, we will have to take up this burden of bringing the synergy. How and when, I do not know. That is left to our discussion. But yes, we do need to acknowledge the fact that this is not a very simplistic problem. It's a multi-layered problem. There are so many things at play. So if we try to see all of these things comprehensively and try to draw out a simple solution, I don't think that it's going to work out. So yeah, thank you for bringing those elements to our discussion. We will need to wrap up. So I will. Yes. Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I would like to really make also an advertisement. I think it will also be very useful and interesting for you guys, because I think you are interested in climate, no? So actually there is a UNESCO, it's not a program, but it's like a youth initiative, which is called You Can. And it's very new. And I'm actually on the steering committee of the UNESCO Youth Committee. And we are now also collaborating with this UNESCO Youth Network, which deals specifically with climate. So if it's, I can tap you here. And also, I'm with it's called UNESCO GYC, and we are opening. We are now opening to members finally. So after almost 3 years of preparation or organization, so so the pandemic really changed a lot, and I think and it's I wrote wrong. So if you want, you can just check the website of UNESCO GYC, and if you are interested in joining, I think it will be very it's a really very dynamic and very, you know, multidisciplinary space for you to also collect for you to gain networks. And regarding Korea, it's actually an India-based organization. So last year, I also joined some of their climate initiatives. I think they are really the leading, maybe youth group, but they are also doing research. But I think most of the people there, they are very young. So I think I think they are the leading organization in the climate action field. But maybe they lack, you know, the cultural aspect. So yeah, that's all. Yeah. thank you for the floor, and we should really continue this dialogue, and even after this event. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I see, Bhola, you have raised your hand. You have the floor. Go on.
Thank you. Yeah, I have been listening. So, like from various persons who have expressed their views, like in terms of what Saran has said about the government trying to notify the people from moving from that volcanic eruption area, but because of the culture, they didn't move in until and unless their head of the culture told. And then again, Mr. Ansari putting up a very good comment about we are more concerned about putting bread on the table. And then again, always going in yes to yes with Tatenda about how do we eat heritage and the economical aspect that has been put under. So I just have one thing that everybody to know. For all these answers, we have the best example, the Uttarakhand flood. Why did it happen? Okay, we know what how a hazard turns into a disaster. We know that, everyone. So in those respect, if we see Uttarakhand flood, it happened due to some natural phenomena. It turned into a disaster because of us. We, the literate people, have done that. How? I think in yesterday's example in the session, it was clearly said how land use and land cover was changed. Now, it's not the culture who has done that. It's not the people staying in the culture has done that, but it's some literate person or the influencing the government so as to say that we changed the land cover and land use. And this resulted in, I think those who have went to Uttarakhand or visited Kedarnath, Badrinath, we know what the situation is. The amount of construction that was happening along the riverside Ganga. Now, this whom do we blame? Yes, the people, until and unless this was feeded into their head that, see, people are coming here, they will be paying this huge amount you are going to earn from your heritage. Now, this has to be fed into somebody's mind. Who did this? This is we, the literate people, have done that, because we saw we have studied the economical aspect of everything, and after learning from it, we took this as an opportunity to make them earn, make ourselves earn. And of course, it's right what Mr. Ansari said. We need bread on the table, but at what cost? We see the cost of what Uttarakhand flood has done, and who are to blame? But personally, I feel that I am in that group as what I call myself as the literate fools. So thank you.
I'm mute. I was mute. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that is actually the reality, right? We have started seeing economic benefits in everything that we do, and I don't know how do we reconcile with that. How do we take things forward? That's up for discussions actually. We are running out of time, so we will not go into that discussion. I see. I don't. How do I pronounce your name? Abiodun. I don't know if I'm doing it correctly. Please, apologies if I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, you really tried. At least I'm Abiodun. Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
from Nigeria.
Great.
Yeah.
Did we lose him?
And I think people are from developing countries' perspective. They are giving their perspective based on how climate change, the issue of cultural heritage and things like that. And I think we came up with the fact that how do we get to tackle these issues and some of these questions are raised. And I have a little bit of maybe a suggestion or something. There's something about I'll be talking from an historian perspective. I'm a historian, so, and I teach history in high school here in Nigeria. So there's something about history that it gives, it's more or less like a heritage itself. Like everybody has history. Each locality, each person, anybody, anywhere, even the heritage, whether it's in what's it called? It's in tangible form or intangible form. It has its own history. So why can't we teach the coming generations or the present generations these things? Like they are part of our history. They should be part of it. They should not be exempted. Why can't they know their history? Of course, their local peoples do understand to some extent their history, but because of the Western education, it has erupted to favoring the STEM courses, like science, technology, and things like that. And all we talk about is modernization and things like neglecting our own past and heritage. What we know, I think there's a session the first session this morning talked about the Australian and how a particular river or something like that. I can't really recall it. But they speak on their folklore. They said the folklore compass their personality. It talks about their history, their science, and so many things, their environment and things like that. So, but Western education, like we all know what which would have at least bring all this knowledge, cultural knowledge of our heritage to us. So, and it seems we have to go back to that path. Let us like elevate or reorganize our educational curriculum to have place for subjects like history. I don't know what it is in other countries, but at least history is a general knowledge, is a general subject that almost every country should at least take as very, very important. Nigeria, where the country I came from, they had issue with history at a point because you know what history does. History is very strict and blunt. So during the military regime of some military regimes decided to relegate history above some other courses, using the excuse of the likes of they are funding science and technology for further modernization and development of the country. So in the course of that, it means people, that was done around 1980. It means people after 1980 didn't even know some things about their past. In fact, most of them didn't know about their past. Not until recently, around 2016, like some 6 years ago, that was when it was reinstated back to the secondary school curriculum. So we could imagine those that were born between 1980 and 2016, how they must have been, I'm not sure they know anything about, unless for personal study, that they know some things about their history, not to talk of their cultural heritage. So when we should inculcate a kind of an educational system that will bring in some of these topics, including climate change. I was trying to read through because I actually wanted to specialize in climate history. So I was reading through and I was trying to like look at how climate has affected the Nigeria and the West African country as a whole. And to a large extent, there are so many issues that climate change actually in so many occurrences that were as a reactions of climate change that occurred as at that time. There was the big drought in 1400 to 600 AD. There was a little high age drought. There was how do Nigerians know or do West Africans know how Trans-Sahara came about? Like the Saharan Desert. Do they know how we had the Sahara Desert? It was as a result of climate change that have occurred over time. It has so if people should understand the repercussions and they learn from history how it has wiped out or almost some people in the past, then they can as well understand that okay, we have to take care of our environment, we have to understand our environment and relate well with it. So it's more or less like orientation and educational policy will help us a lot in achieving all these things, no matter what, be it developed countries or developing countries. We always fight for food on our table, but at the same time, we can't say because we want to eat and we have to endanger ourselves, and we should not have good and adequate knowledge about our environment. I think that was my own point.
Thank you so much, Abiodun, for sharing as well. I was just thinking when you mentioned climate history that got to look more into that, especially following this week's sessions. It's such a fascinating subject area. And then now at this point, I would like to thank everyone for joining, and we're going to start wrapping this up. So I'm sure many of you already also saw my email about the Hopescape. And I think since this was such an active discussion, I would really love to invite all of you to contribute if you haven't yet. So I'll put the information in the chat and explain it a bit. So it was in the email, but for those who haven't read it, we were doing an exercise yesterday in the Climate Open Mic about imagining the future, and in a very hopeful, dreaming, visionary type of way. So perhaps maybe we should use a broader term than heritage, considering some of people's backgrounds here. But I think then we can take the question more, if you had a dream for the future in 30 years and you didn't have to think about climate change or lack of resources or any other types of obstacles, what do you want the future or heritage to feel like, to look like, to taste like? So using the link in the chat, you can type in a couple of words. I think it's 2 to 5 words per box. And then we're making this big collage of words from as many people as possible during the conference. So we'll have a really nice word cloud tomorrow with hopefully lots of positive visions and inspiring visions as well. Because what we were trying to emphasize here with Hope, and I see Marcy's also with us, and she was telling us about how she did this exercise about having hope for the future, and that it's not just, blind optimism about the future. It's trying to think of what gives you hope so that it can inspire you to action. And I think especially with so many members from the Youth Forum, you've said this so many times as well. I think the one I can remember is that someone mentioned just keep swimming from Finding Dory. It's still in my head. So we're really using hope here as a tool and as a motivator, something to hold on to even in the face of insurmountable odds. So I really invite everyone to join, and thank everyone again, and thank RuPaul as well for helping to organize this session. And thank you so much to everyone who joined in on the discussion. I think with this group, we definitely could have kept going for quite a while. So it's a pity we have to wrap up. Seeing everyone's words in the chats. Interesting about the Netherlands. Thank you very much. So we hope to see you all tomorrow. And if once you've added your phrases to the Mentimeter, we'll be sharing it as well during the closing panel tomorrow. So definitely make sure you're also there. It's a very impressive session, the closing panel tomorrow. So thank you to everyone, and have a good rest of the day.